basically the way that this is gonna go is that I'll just go through a crash course of all this sort of stuff that you need to start thinking about engineering, like the general thought process, where to build, like what to build with, that sort of stuff. And then that will just sort of naturally segue, as engineering does, into how you should actually structure your base, how you need to maintain it long term, the fun stuff and the less fun stuff, and then we'll just periodically open it up for questions. Can everybody hear me okay? Get out of the road.
Yeah, sure, start.
Yeah.
Okay.
Call.
Alright, so
Hello.
there's a few different things that I'll give you guys if you're not familiar already, and if you're already aware of this stuff that's going to be coming out of my mouth, I apologize in advance. There's going to be a lot of that. There are some things that will absolutely save your life as a new player, whether or not you're into engineering. So I would definitely recommend taking these down if you have something with you, and I'll give you like 10 seconds to open up Notepad or something. The first website is going to be foxholelogy.com. If you are producing anything, it will give you a breakdown of the resources that you need to make whatever it is you're trying to make. For the purposes of engineering, that would be like bunker supplies and garrison supplies, so we'll cover that in the future, and like why you would use one over the other, because that's like one of the most asked questions. The second one that will save your life is Logiwaze, LOGIWAZE.com, which is the closest thing that you're ever going to get to a Google Maps, where you can put in the name of a location and the name of another location, and there's a 90% chance the website will be able to figure out what you're trying to plot, and then plot what should be the fastest route, and then you can control whether it tries to take into consideration like enemy territory and stuff like that. There is a program that you can use that I extremely recommend, but you're not obligated to use, just because some people are concerned about .exes. That would be N as in Nick, I auto clicker. That is a program that is basically like point and click. It's very simple to set up. That will, based off of where you tell it, will click on a portion of Foxhole's screen over and over again based off of how many clicks you want it set up per minute. It would be useful in situations where you're going to be shoveling and you just don't want to look at your dude shovel for like 30 seconds and you want to watch YouTube in the background. Engineering is honestly like 40% planning and 20% logistics, and the rest of it is just like digging with YouTube. That time I'm almost not kidding. Control W, just using your standard like Windows default settings, will let you automatically run or automatically drive forward. You can still press A and D to turn left and right. There is an option in your Windows settings called click hold under advanced mouse settings. You set that to max delay, and that means that when you hold your mouse for longer than 3 seconds, it'll automatically just keep assuming that you want to hold down the mouse button. It's useful for things like harvesters and digging and hammering and all that stuff, where you still
just be careful when you try to cook a grenade.
Yes, you will kill yourself if you forget to turn it off, or it'll seem like you've lost your mind and you have like a Malone and you're just like infinitely spraying and you forget why. There is a max number of builders per thing that you're constructing, and that is 3. The exception, sort of, is if you're in like a multi-part building like that bunker core over there that has like technically 9 parts to it. There can be up to 3 repairers on each one of those bits. So, you can have like, I don't know, because I can't do math even though it was part of my past life, like 80, you can have like 80 repairs on like a bunker core, all repairing different pieces if you really wanted to, and have the BMS to supply it. The number of max people you can have shoveling on something is unlimited. So if you had enough people, in theory, you could get like a trench up every second if you really wanted to. I don't know if there's actually like diminishing returns or anything like that. Let's pretend, because it's going to be happening soon, that it is completely brand new war start. Where the fuck do you go? What do you do? What do you bring with you? There's a couple of things that every base is going to need in order to be successful in the short and long term, regardless of what stage of the game that is. That is a construction vehicle, that one there, which you can build at any static base, and a static base being a town hall or relic base. They're both exactly the same in terms of like what I'm talking about right now. You are going to want to get 1200 BMAS, which is 2400 scrap from a salvage field. and you're going to need shovels. So my recommendation is to get a Logi truck from literally anywhere because they're going to be going really fast because everybody wants a truck because nobody wants to walk. And you're going to go to the nearest salvage field, grab 1,500 salvage, do 2 runs of that, get it to a factory, get 1,500 B mats, and then you're going to use 100 of those to make a CV, stuff all the rest of the B mats into the CV, and put the other 200 into a crate of shovels, into a factory, and the factories you can see on the map. That will let you build get the shovels that you need, dump it into anywhere that's close, like a safe house or a relic base or whatever. Pull a couple to a few shovels under the assumption that you have friends, because haha, we all have friends, right? Because we play this game, and and you're going to just build a bunker base like this. So, what the game cares about as far as what a bunker base is, like when it will allow you to build a bunker base entrance, is a maximum of, or is a minimum of 6 pieces, like in whatever arrangement. It could be diamond pieces, it can be square pieces, as long as it's something cohesive, then like and all touching each other, then it'll allow the base entrance to be built. After that, in order for you to upgrade it any further than that, you need to tier 2 or upgrade each of these little pieces to tier 2, which will let you put something called a modification into it. Modifications have like little passive bonuses to them, but the reason why you want them is because they'll allow you to upgrade the base. It'll let you build things like rifle garrisons, machine gun garrisons, AT garrisons, concrete, observation bunkers, so on and so forth, way down the line, depending on how many garrisons you have and of what kind. The first thing that you need to take into account when you're starting building for the first time, if you are going to a place and you have the CV that I talked about, a couple of shovels and 1,200 BMATs, you have to be prepared to be yelled at by people that both do know and do not know what they're talking about as far as building goes. Everyone is going to judge you. It's just part of it. Even if they're like a major general, it doesn't necessarily mean that they know what they're talking about, and you have to get practice somewhere. So normally I would recommend that you build a bunker base somewhere that is either under the AI range, which I'll explain later, under the AI range of a relic base or town base, so that you can get the different advantages that offers, or for your first time, you're going to want to build it in near a non-critical area or around something non-critical but still important, like your salvage mines or your salvage fields or whatever. The scrappers that are going to be there are still going to be grateful for it because they're going to feel safe, and there's a chance that it might actually protect against partisans that are trying to be disruptive. The When you actually get like your blueprint up of like the minimum 6 different pieces, or like a bow tie design like this, and I'll explain what these little diagonals are for later, you want to blueprint everything out first with your shovel. You want to have everything blueprinted, like with these little like diamond or square pieces out, these little trench blueprints out, without fully digging them up, because once you dig them up, the terrain around them slightly changes, and you won't be able to ever get buildings as close together, or bunker pieces as close together as you did before, which is annoying and doesn't really make sense, but you know, it's according to the vision TM, so you know, all we can do is work around it. And I know this is a loaded question, but any questions so far about anything?
Should we also talk about setting spawns and upgrades? Or you can do that?
Yeah, so we can go over that now. This state, the state of this bunker base, even though it's not tier 2'd at all, not upgraded at all, it's literally just the pieces and the bunker entrance, will allow you to put supplies into it. There are some supplies that every base needs in order to survive, regardless of what the stage of the war it is. It needs soldier supplies, which is basically like the number of spawns that you can have before it runs out. Pretty basic stuff, before you just can't spawn at that base anymore. Guns, ammo, some type of like infantry option, like a grenade, something to help deal with infantry that isn't gun related. Some high explosive, like mammons, are pretty much all that you're going to be able to use for a long time. And like BMATs. BMATs up to like 15 to 2,000 if you can at all help it, just having it on hand in case there's repairs needed or additions need to be made. Once you have these bits tier 2'd, which we can actually go about now. So I'm going to go bring the CV over, and then we can all take BMATs out of it and then build it up.
Do we need a shovel or a
Just a hammer.
hammer?
Just a hammer is all that you'll need. So grab 75 BMATs out of the CV. And then head over to any of the pieces that are not touched yet, and go into press F for upgrade mode for your hammer, which you'll see at the top left of the screen, it being an upgrade mode or build mode, and then select tier 2 bunker, and then hit it basically 75 times until it's built up.
Yeah, Greg, you take this one. Try this one. Do this one. So hover, press E.
We're a bit short on BMATs.
I think that someone said that they have BMATs in one of these trucks. It's probably this one. I don't think it's that one. Apparently it's not this one either.
Green truck. This one. 1 second.
Oh, I know we're trying. Awesome. I'm gonna put some more in the CV.
I'll bring it over there. Give this.
So we're pressing F for the upgrade mode, and then we just hammer away.
You can press F to get to upgrade mode just long enough until it gives you the option of selecting one of like these burlap topped ones and changing it to tier 2. You don't actually need to be in upgrade mode in order to build. You can switch back to build mode once you have the blueprint up, which is when it's light blue like that.
Mm.
And the reason why I'm not building is because I have exactly 200 BMATs, which I need for the modification upgrades that we touched on very briefly earlier. And the friendly reminder is that when you're building things like this, like a light blue structure, you can only have up to 3 people building at one time. Now the game will show you that you're building it still, and you're still using BMATs, but you're not actually progressing it any faster, which is weird to think about. Alright, and we'll head actually inside the bunker base, assuming that we all fit.
Is it the same for like tank repairs or vehicle repairs?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Right. So in each of these diagonals,
And bridges.
each of these diagonal squares, we're going to put a modification. So I have exactly 200 BMATs. I'm going to split them up into groups of 50, and then I'll just drop them in each. And literally anyone can grab those 50. Now with the upgrade mode that we just talked about, you're going to face the empty square while still standing outside of it because the targeting is a little bit weird. And you're going to select the locker or the beds. It's just purely aesthetic. They both give the same passive bonus. They both contribute towards the same types of upgrades. It literally doesn't matter. And with it facing like however you want, like with the middle mouse scroll wheel, you can like change the orientation of which walls they're on and so on. You can put them down. The only consideration that you may want to think about is if there are connections that are like tunnels supposed to like lead out of those. Like in each of these, it would be nice to put them like all the way at the ends, but it would be better to leave them like on the side walls That way infantry
So-
can still run into the trench connectors. That said, this isn't a real combat situation, so don't worry about it. Like, we don't have to worry about like getting attacked by like a million Kali infantry and tanks and arty and all that stuff. It's just something to keep in mind for the future. Like this one that was placed as a side here. That will allow people to just like run out of the tunnels if they need to. And the way that you would want to design bases is you want people to just smooth brain as much as possible. You don't want defenders to even have to think about where they're supposed to go. You want to create like a route for them to go that's natural to them. So if the southwest or west side is being destroyed or being attacked and they spawn, they should have the feeling that they could just go west and go through a tunnel system in order to get to whatever firing ports or rifle garrisons or whatever that they need in order to help defend the base. So we put those rifle garrisons, or those garrison modifications down. There are two types of modifications, and you can see that by going into your upgrade mode, regardless of if you have BMATs or not. And opening up your menu, you can see there's a little man icon next to the lockers, the toiletries, the wash station, kitchen, and so on. And then you can see little chevrons next to the other ones. There's two different types of modifications and subgroups. The types of modifications, the one that have the little people next to it, will allow you, depending on the number that you have, to build more advanced types of defenses eventually. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So
Quick question.
Yep, go ahead.
How do you access the upgrade menu again?
Sure. You mean the upgrade menu?
Yeah.
You press F on your keyboard. At the top left, you'll see Hammer Build Mode. When you press F, you'll see Hammer Upgrade. And you can select any of these spaces, and it'll show you and highlighted like what types of modifications you could put there if you have enough BMATs for it, basic materials. So the ones that we can build right off are bunkers and lockers. We need to build more modifications in general of that same people category in order to have access to the other ones. You want access to the other ones eventually because if you hover over their descriptions, they will tell you that they give little passive bonuses up to a certain maximum. So you could have, for example, a combination of 10 lockers and beds for a 10% chance to not consume a soldier supply when someone spawns, which is like a big whoop, right? But some of the other ones are a little bit powerful. So like for the wash station and the kitchen and the pantry, each one reduces the amount of time that an anti-tank garrison needs before it can fire again. And the same thing with the howitzer garrison. I don't know the exact values, but I believe that it shortens the amount of time that it needs by like, I don't know, half a second, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're in a situation where you're begging the AT to fire as quickly as possible, it will matter to you in that moment. If you hover over the bunker base and where it says like press E to use bunker base at the bottom left and you access the menu, on the right side you'll see base and base upgrades. What is highlighted in red means that if you have enough of that type of modification just anywhere connected to your bunker complex or bunker inside your bunker complex, you can start building technology points towards that thing. And I'll explain what tech points is in a minute. You can see like how like there's a lot to engineering, and I don't expect anyone to remember any of this. You will eventually get it through muscle reflex and just osmosis of just like building it yourself and seeing like what happens and why. The stuff that is in white is stuff that is eligible to be worked towards now. The stuff that is in red, you need modifications of in order to start working towards that thing. So under the upgrade menu that I mentioned before, where you had like the like computer stations and like work desks and stuff like that, the stuff with the chevrons, you need 6 of those types of modifications of any combination of those in order to start progressing technology points towards the observation bunker. We've built 4 rifle garrisons, we built 4 like people or garrison modifications, so we can start working towards rifle garrison. The first tier of each of these types of like upgrades for the base are very fast, typically. Like provisional garrison, which is where you set your spawn to it, and as long as 10 people or more have their spawn set to the base, it'll activate the AI for defenses within like an 80-meter radius. That typically upgrades itself in like 15 minutes. The rifle garrison is the same thing. So if we all switch over to the rifle garrison, which you can do by accessing the interface, pressing the assign spawn point button at the actions bar at the bottom of the interface, where it says this bunker is now your forward spawn point. And then if you click on the rifle garrison icon itself with a little green check mark appearing afterward, you are contributing your points, the points that you give to the base just by merely existing, to that upgrade of your choice. That's the best way of thinking about it. And then over time, probably within the next 15 minutes to half an hour, especially with this many people, the game will allow us to build rifle garrisons once that is completely filled, like to be a completely gray box. The tech point system is not clear at all. Like a lot of this game is just like trial and error and just figuring it out over time. What allows a base to upgrade technology in itself the fastest is determined by a bunch of different things. The first thing we accomplished by setting our spawn point to the base, we are telling the base that we are planning to operate out of this long term, and I voted for the type of upgrade that I want this base to have. The act of having your spawn set to a base gives a points bonus towards the technology of your choice. If you don't set your choice with a little green check mark to any of the upgrades, it will split all your upgrade points, like the technology points, across whatever available options there are. As long as you are anywhere in the same hex and you don't leave the whole region, like if you don't leave Orbreaker Isles, even if you're on the opposite side of the hex, you will still be contributing those points that I mentioned passively just by having your spawn set to it. There's a large number of other things that will give its own points bonuses. So for example, respawning gives a points bonus. Look, it just jumped up to like 2/3 of the way done, just because of the sheer number of people doing things around the base and having their spawn set to it. And that's incredibly fast because it's only been like 5 minutes since we all selected that. Putting stuff into the base, taking stuff out of the base, doing stuff in general around the base, presumably within the 80 meters of it, upgrading the base, and spawning and respawning at the base, putting a certain number of a combination of items in the base. So for example, in theory, allegedly, if you have 500 to 5,000 items of any combination in a bunker base, that gives its own points bonus. Some people think that if you have the maximum number of items that you can in a base, 32,000, that will increase it super fast. There's all sorts of theories, but all you need to think about is that just doing the sort of stuff that you would naturally want to do with a base is going to contribute to it upgrading its technology quickly. The second tier of upgrades, like the small garrison, the machine gun garrison, the concrete structures, takes a lot longer on average. The first row of upgrades will take probably about 15 minutes, except for the observation bunkers, which may take a few hours. The second row will easily take like 12 hours if it's just you out in the middle of, bumfuck nowhere. If there's a ton of people all interacting with the base, pulling stuff out of it, putting stuff in it, logi trucks passing through the area on like a regular basis and so on, at that time will probably be cut down to 8 or less hours. So it makes a huge difference. And then, as you can imagine, the large garrison, the AT garrison, and so on are going to take probably like a day or two, depending on how much activity there is in the area. So once we have all this stuff dug out, let's just imagine that we do, because you're not required to dig it all out because there's a lot here. And you put more and more modifications in. So for example, if you hover over you're accessing the bunker base interface, and you hover your mouse cursor over machine gun garrison, you'll see that we have 4 out of 8 required garrison or people modifications. We would need to put 4 more lockers or beds or whatever other combination you want somewhere in the base. As long as it's connected by a trench to the bunker base, it will count it. It takes a few minutes for it to recognize that there are more modifications available to it before it'll let you select the upgrade. The only other thing I could think of so far as far as like upgrading and stuff is concerned is that you may or may not have noticed that while we tier 2'd or upgraded all of these pieces that are surrounding the bunker base entrance, we didn't actually upgrade the entrance itself. The entrance itself is a unique snowflake in that it needs the small garrison and large garrison upgrades to upgrade to tier 2 and tier 3 respectively. It won't allow it otherwise. And the reason why you would want the tier 2 stuff outside of being able to put modifications in it, because tier 1 won't allow you to put modifications like these in it, is because of I've completely lost my train of thought, dude. Where did it go? I had a thought, and it's, it's fucking gone now.
It's because of the garrisons.
It's I don't know where my thought process. Oh, the integrity, right? That whole thing. So a reason other than being able to put modifications in is because of the integrity. Integrity is one of those systems that the game does not explain at all in any way that is going to be helpful to you. There's a reason why people don't build like 1 million section long bunker pieces, like bunker defense sections. Typically, if you go to an established base, you'll see sections that are like 7 pieces big, or 9 pieces big, or 11 pieces big at maximum. And the reason is integrity. This is going to be a lot. I do not expect you to retain this. There's going to be a lot of words coming out of my mouth, so I apologize in advance. If the more pieces that you add to something, the more health it could have. What determines how much health it could have is the integrity. The more pieces that you add to something, the higher the chance that the integrity is going to keep dropping and dropping until it degrades down a level. The integrity is rated, and you can see the type of integrity that something has by going into your upgrade mode and hovering over any piece of the section that you want to look at. So for example, where it shows you like next to the little hammer icon, faction neutral, health 100, builder, it tells you who built it, bunker size, the number of pieces that are involved, and structural integrity. The structural integrity of this bunker piece, or this bunker section, is low. It can go as low as critical, which basically means that you could sneeze on it and it explodes. Or it could be all the way up to high. In theory, you would want stuff to be high all the time, which you can't reasonably expect. The most integrity that you can reasonably expect is probably going to be medium on most defense sections, unless you're building like a 1x3. The structural integrity, even though it is low, what that means is that each piece, while contributing its own health to the overall structure, is counting for less. And how I can best explain that is that this is not accurate information. I'm condensing it in a way that is going to hopefully make sense. If we go out into the street here, and you'll see this like little 2B rifle garrison that is right outside. Think of this solo piece once it's built as having 100 health. That means it can take 100 points of damage before it gets destroyed. If you were to add 2 other pieces to it, watch out, Boogaloo. If you were to add 2 other pieces to it, when this is tier 2'd, it will likely have high integrity. You can think of high integrity as each piece giving like 90% of its health to the defense section as a whole. So you can think of it as it having 270 health, the whole structure. So this piece is giving 100, this piece is giving 100, this piece is giving 100, and then the game calculates it out and says, okay, it has high integrity. It probably is going to have like 270 health, which means that no matter where it's hit with like a mammon or like a high explosive grenade or a cutler or whatever, the whole structure has to take almost 300 damage before it gets destroyed. And then the whole section just blows up, and then hopefully it leaves like something called a husk behind that you can rebuild right after. If you were to hold your cursor over it in upgrade mode, and you can also do shovel upgrade mode if you want, you'll see that the structural integrity is medium. It means you can think of it as giving like 80% of its health instead. So it would have something like, just imagine it having like 220 or 230 health. And then if it gets low, then it would probably be like 180. Critical would probably be like 120. So like to the point that, you know, you may as well have only built like one piece. There are certain things that will lower the integrity and certain things that will increase the integrity. The easiest way to increase integrity is to keep the defense section number of pieces to a reasonable amount. So anywhere between 3 and 9. The way to also increase integrity, the most straightforward way, and the only real way, let's be honest, is to upgrade their tier. So if we were to upgrade this section here to tier 2 and make them all wood, like those ones over there, then it would increase to high integrity, so it counts for more. If you were to have this 1x3 be like 1x6, in tier 2 it would have medium integrity because you're starting to lose out on like the benefit. Hang on, I need to upgrade this guy or invite this guy. Oh, he's not. You have to leave your squad and then join mine. If this were to be like 1x6, for example, then it would be medium integrity. If you were to upgrade it to tier 3, which requires concrete, which is like more of a complex thing that I'm not going to cover today, then that would increase the integrity very high, and it would likely be high integrity anyway. Concrete, the different types of structures also have damage resistances that I won't cover too much, but you can just think of it as like each tier up that you go has better resistance to almost every damage type. So these little like tier 1 burlap like structures here can take very little punishment, or can from like anything. So like you can expect like mammons to do like full damage, cutlers to do full damage. Even the 12.7 machine gun round will be able to damage these. If you were to upgrade these to tier 2, the 12.7 wouldn't be able to damage it anymore. I mean, in theory, you could shoot at it for like 2 or 3 hours and it would get damaged, but it wouldn't damage it realistically. And tier 3, you can just forget about it. Anything except for like hardcore explosives aren't going to do any lasting damage to it. Even like sustained artillery isn't going to be able to do much damage to it. Like if it gets hit with a 120mm artillery shell and it's concrete, you can expect it to take like 2% damage out of 100, out of its like total 100%. So all that stuff out of the way, we'll talk about like, actually before I do that, anyone have questions?
So can a car like this, if it's concrete, like this size, can it survive 2-gun modes?
I need to figure out where you are, Javali. Oh, you're over there.
I mean this bow tie core there. Like
Yeah.
one full gun boat salvo, can it survive that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the proof was at Tomb last war when a gunboat had a dream that it was going to be able to take out sections, and it was firing like 120s. Like it did, in its whole salvo, it did probably like 5 to 10% damage at most. It's so ridiculously strong and resistant. There is a special damage type that there's 2 different types of damage that can hurt these types of structures once they're tier 2'd, and that's high explosive and demolition. Demolition is rare. Things like storm cannons were able to do demolition damage, which is why they were so destructive. They would just ignore the damage reductions from like tier 2 and tier 3 altogether. The collies, because they get all the fun toys, right? They get a special, like a type of like early satchel charge called a Hydra's Whisper that can do that demolition type. Satchel charges are the only other demolition type that I'm aware of. And I'm sorry, I think I cut somebody off.
And the 250.
The 250 is also yes. I forgot about the 250 because it wasn't really used that much last war for some reason, or from what I observed. Like Chieftains and Arbalists and the 250 field gun.
Yeah, that's another question I had. Was it to have a 250 wheelchair to just destroy your stuff when you're building?
Given how expensive the ammo type is, and given how annoying it is to load and move around 250, it's definitely a nice thought. But by the time that you have 250 in regular enough amounts, you're probably going to have satchel charges already. Your main tool unfortunately, for the medium game is probably going to be Mammons. And I hate to say it because it takes a huge number of explosive grenades. For anyone that is not aware, for reasons that are beyond me, there are were no real options before this last update to easily remove structures that you want moved or removed or changed in some way. Before, you had to use high explosives, like high explosive grenades, in order to remove your own structures. The devs.
So basically, gonna change now.
Right, the devs, in their infinite knowledge and wisdom, included the bare bones option of going into your upgrade mode and hovering over any piece, and you can still see this even though you can't reserve it yourself unless you're the original builder behind it, like the one that placed the blueprint down. You'll see in like either with the hammer out or the shovel out, if you go into upgrade mode and select a piece with E, under actions you'll see reserve, remove reservation, and demolish. Reserving something allows you to destroy it as long as it's within 3 hours of you originally building it, regardless of what tier it is. And that reservation will allow anyone in your squad to reserve it, and I believe also destroy it, or destroying it may actually be limited to the original builder. I'll have to look into that. But that option of demolish, it'll actually tell you that you have to reserve it in order to demolish it, and that'll let you blow it up without the need of grenades. Normally, outside of that 3-hour grace period window, you wouldn't be able to destroy anything anymore. The game would just say no, even though you built this and you want it moved or changed in some way. You can't. You just have to deal with it or maiming it down like the old way. There is a bug that we all together need to swear we will never tell the devs about or update them on, that allows you to remove remove stuff that you've built after the 3-hour mark. There's a couple of the conditions that you need to fill before you can actually do that. You need to be able to have the option of upgrading whatever it is that you're looking at or wanting to deal with from tier 1 to tier 2 or tier 2 to tier 3. The option is all you need in order to do this. You hover over whatever section that you want to have removed, you click on it in order to place the blueprint, and then you do not build it up in any way. You do not give it any BMATs or anything, and then you just let the blueprint fade away on its own, which normally takes a few seconds. Once you do that, as far as the game is concerned, you just put that structure down. And this counts even if it's tier 2 to tier 3. The game will just say this is a brand new structure. Why it does that, I have no idea, but I will take it because it allows you to refresh that 3-hour window and then you just reserve it and demolish it afterward.
You sneaky bastard.
It is the only non-psychotic way to destroy stuff, and it's also one of the reasons why I tell people to not upgrade trenches unless you are 100% sure that it's going to be there forever, because tier trenches in general have an enormous amount of health, and they're so easy to build back in their original positions most of the time. So unless you have like piping, which I'll explain later, piping running through them, you don't upgrade them. Or if they are like one of these emplacement pits on the southwest side. So we'll go to the southwest side. These emplacement pits are going to should be incorporated into every single one of your bunker designs, no matter how small they are. You won't see a lot of bases, at least not yet, have these like big trenches built pretty close to defenses in a ring around your base. If we pretend like these trees aren't up here like southeast and that this is all flat, you would want this trench ring with periodic hexes or periodic pits to be littered all around your base. There's a couple of reasons for that, and you want these pits to be upgraded to tier 2 for 50 BMATs. This is what's referred to as an anti-satchel ring, and even though you won't need it for, I'd say, probably like the first 70% of the game, you will absolutely be unequivocally glad that you have it in like the last 30% of the game. Because this setup here, this ring, will stop people from just like rushing in and like suppressing your rifle garrison and getting like 10 dudes to easily run up to the defenses in order to satchel them. There is a huge radius to satchel charges, but they are not this far. So imagine that we would, I don't have any BMATs on me, but you would want to put wire along the outside of the hexes and like the little entrance going out into the pit, like from your bunker section, and have that wire be completely all around the anti-satchel ring. You want to make sure that when you build this trench system that's around it, that you reserve it right away. People feel compelled to dig trenches out and connect them to these pits. Trenches need to be thought of as like a wild card or a liability unless you incorporate them into your base design in a very specific way. And the very specific way is what we're looking at here. These pits will allow you to place like emplaced anti-tank guns and emplaced machine guns in them. It keeps and these pits give a durability and health bonus to the guns that are in the pits. And these are like fairly significant bonuses too. So if you were to put an emplaced gun in one of these pits, just with it even being tier 1, it has like 25% more health, which means that it can take a lot more punishment than it otherwise would be if it was just out in the open. Once you upgrade it to tier 2, that's a 50% bonus. Tier 3 is probably like 75 or something. It's a huge advantage that they have. With the wire on the outside, it means that people can't easily get to your emplacements, even if they were to gas them out repeatedly. If you have doorways leading from the inside of your bunker base, going through these sections and into the pits, it follows that smooth brain mentality that I mentioned before, where the person should naturally feel like they can just run to the EAT pits without exposing themselves to artillery or outside fire, and feel safe that they're going to be in a wired emplacement, and then they could just sit on it and shoot shit. It also has the benefit of so normally the reason why you would want to avoid trenches is because they're neutral. The enemy in most situations where there's a trench in the middle of nowhere can use them easily. They can just like even if you built them with the idea of building them up to like the enemy base, which is using them offensively, which is good. Even though I hate the look of it, it is good to do that. The enemy can just hold onto those and then use them defensively themselves. By using them so close to the base like this, you're reducing the amount of time that the defenders need to run over to the defenses. You're keeping the defenders secure, and it means that the pits or the trenches are covered by the defenses themselves. So you would want the doorways to be built into rifle garrisons. So
I had a question. Yeah. How should we think about what the
And if I
purpose
build
is
those
of
offensive trenches like that, can I reserve them and destroy them?
Oh, hang on. Inundate, what'd you say?
If
Yeah,
I
how
build
should we
offensive
think-
trenches like that, if there's an enemy base and I'm trying to build offensive trenches to get near, can I reserve them and then delete them later?
Yeah, you would be able to do that as long as it's within the half hour. You'd also be able to do that tier 2 trench trick that I mentioned before. As long as you're the one that placed the blueprint down, you can freely reserve and delete them afterward. Once they're tier 2'd though, there's really no way to get rid of those outside of explosives because the only other option is to connect them directly to your bunker base so that you have the option of upgrading them to tier 3. That's the only thing.
I see. Because it needs concrete.
Exactly. Inundate,
So-
I think you had a question?
Yeah. How should we think about what the purpose is of a trench? Whether what do you use as a rubric to decide whether or not to build a trench in a spot?
There's two different situations that I would build a trench. In like any real like massive way. It's specifically for the purposes of creating a anti-satchel and second layer defenses ring around a base like this, or offensively, which means that you dig a trench semi-close to the enemy. You feel safe that you have the armored and infantry support that you need to not lose those trenches right away. And then while you're sitting in the trenches, to just progressively dig them out closer and closer to the enemy so that you can connect your trenches to their trenches and basically allow like a through line all the way into their trench line. Collies in general, and this is some confirmation bias, collies in general do not know how to build. So it is very unlikely that they will have a trench ring like this surrounding their base. But needless to say, if you dig up trenches real close to their base, it allows you to do things like safely throw mammons while inside the trench, or gas grenades or whatever. The collies do have a tendency to trench spam. They will just find a spot that's semi-close to your base and just dig random trenches in all directions to try to get close so that they can throw like boomstones and shit safely from inside the trench.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay. So these like entrance ways, you're going to want to limit the amount of access that the enemy has to get into your base. On paper, you want to have only one through line, either going left or right out of your bunker core to your defenses, so that if in the unlikely event or unfortunate event that the enemy is able to get into your trench system, you know exactly where they're going to be coming from. There's no confusion. So even if you were to build connections, for example, like this, you wouldn't actually put a doorway on this little section here. You would put a firing port. That way, it serves two purposes. It confuses the enemy because they're going to believe that all these are going to be entrances that lead into the rifle garrison. It also reduces the amount of cover that they have because the rifle garrisons are going to be having more ways to shoot at them from inside the trench. And it allows you to do things like protect yourselves from boomstones by having like little avenues to go into if they throw grenades in. Or if you're inside the bunker section itself, to be able to yeet grenades and safely from inside the defense section into the trench. So it serves multiple purposes. But you would actually... What's up?
So it's like a kill box. That's what you're making right here without the entrance.
Exactly. It fucks with the enemy's brain, and it gives you multiple options to protect yourself defensively if you're inside the section or out in the trench.
So he's gonna run right into you, and you have a rifle pointing at him.
Yeah,
yep,
they're going to be panicking.
Smart.
They're going to be in fight or flight mode the entire time, so they're not going to be thinking about things like that. Once they get into your trench, their first line of thought is, how can I get into the base without having to go through like where the enemy likely is going to be. And so they're going to keep looping around the trench system, trying to find a door until they just die to the defenses, or they get caught out by the actual defenders who are able to who know the layout of the base and can just take whatever route that they need to and are safe from the inside. There is a limitation to how far out your defenses can go. The game does not tell you this at all. You can have up to 40 things extended out from your core before the game gets mad and decides that you can't build whatever upgrade you're trying to do, like a rifle garrison or a machine gun garrison. So if we start at the bunker core here, you have to think of it as like the branches of like a tree, for example. So you can have up to like 40 twigs out before the game gets mad. And so it helps to count out, arguably out loud, how many sections you have to go, or how many pieces you have to go until the game's not going to let you build defenses anymore. So right where I'm standing here is going to be 1 off, like 1. If I was to go to the northeast side, this would still be 1. Other side would still be 1. And then you count out towards the extent that you're trying to get the defense. So it would be like on the southwest side, it would be 1, 2. This little trench segment here would be 3. This diamond piece 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on. You can have up to 40 connections out until the game gets mad. If there's a situation where you have one like area of your base connected to another, the game will recalculate how many connections it has to that thing. So if you feel like you can get away with something like at the very edge of that 40 connection limit, by building something like south and then connecting it in some roundabout way, you can do that. And we're talking about fringe circumstances. In order for you to have to capitalize on 40 connections in any direction, you're talking about like a mega base, which is like your storm cannon platform plus intel weapon plus 3 inbuilt arty pits, indoor swimming pool, skate park, industrial coffee machine,
How many, Tomb of the First, how many branches on that?
That amazingly cut out to about 35, and the reason why it got so close to the 40 is because we were dealing with the lore ring that was around, like the lore structure.
Right.
So we had to kind of like artificially bloat it out like that. It looks super cool, but it did get us a little bit sweaty because we were getting awfully close almost all the time to that 40 connection limit. So
Yeah.
there's.
And what do you mean by the game gets mad?
That's
What
my
does that
way
mean?
of saying like it basically, if you get to 41 connections
Mhm.
and you whip out your hammer and you go into upgrade mode to build a field garrison on that 41st connection, the option to build the rifle garrison will be grayed out, as if you didn't have the technology upgrade on the base at all. And the game will not tell you why. There's no pop-up that says, we're sorry, you're at 41 out of the 40 connections out from your bunker core. This is why you can't build this. It will just not explain it at all. So
It's a hidden cap on it.
exactly. There's also a hidden cap on pipes that the game also doesn't tell you about. Piping being used with like engine rooms, which is 20. Once you get out to 21, the game will start artificially depleting the amount of power that it's giving whatever structures, and I'll explain that later if we get to it. Because that's more of like a intermediate thing.
Are these trenches and and octagons? Do they count for the 40?
Yes, each one would be 40 out unless they're connected and like interconnected in some way. So if I hop onto the core here, and this would be 1, just like normal, going southeast, there's a trench connector here, so that's 2. This hex would be 3, 4, and 5. Or taken a different way, counting the fact that this is connected on the side, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4 for the connector, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to get to the centerpiece. The game will always take the path of least resistance, for lack of a better way of explaining it. So as far as like how many connections out you can get away with, it'll count this if it's closer. So the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This setup that I have here is kind of like a Frankenstein bastard version of the West March setup that I had, God rest its soul, where it had as part of its static defenses a inbuilt 120 artillery piece. I would recommend that you make it a point of including at least one pit that looks like this in some fashion extremely close to your bunker core, so that people can just go over to your bunker core, pull the shells that they need, including in the future a concrete ammo rack, which will make it even easier, and can just even like knife fight with the 120 shells, which actually did happen at West March. the tank lines were so close, and there were 3 pits like these, and there was like 3 different ways that people could go to ammo rooms in order to pull shells, and they were actually like close quarters fighting with the 120 guns. It was very funny to look at. The collies did not like it at all. They did not like that shit happening to them. It was very confusing to them because they kept looking for like traditional arty spots, and then once they realized that the 120s were built like into the fabric of the base with defenses covering them on all sides, it's very difficult to do anything about that outside of storm cannoning it, which they did.
How rude.
So as far as like basic like build designs go, for your first bunker base, you want 6 pieces. One of them can be a bunker entrance. The game will not tell you until it's too late whether your bunker entrance is going to be blocked by something. So normally most bases that you would see would have it so that the bunker core and the entrance is going to be pretty darn close to the road. This is different in that there's a bridge right here, like almost right next to the road and leading directly into the bunker entrance. The spacing for this, it will take time and mistakes to get, but you would want coverage of some kind for the front entrance of your base. The reason is that each of these diagonals that we built will one day grow up to be howitzer garrisons. So basically if like a partisan runs up here or like a suicide truck or something, you want something like interfering with those partisans that are running up to the front of the base so that people can't just like easily run up and lob grenades into the mouth of the entrance and not be retaliated against. So these 2 pieces on the sides here would be rifle garrisons with like a bridge in between, you know, for lodging and all that. It also prevents people that are spawning in the base or interacting with the base from getting run over immediately, because the driver has to slow down at least a little bit in order to drop stuff off. I'll show you how to replicate this if we go northeast a little bit. This should be enough. It's not going to be enough space. Okay, over here. Sorry. So you would basically be setting this up as close to the road as you can get away with at the start. You would build your bunker core afterward, and you would have this as close to the road as you can get away with. Now, as far as like how to judge how close you can get your bunker entrance to the bridge, is going to involve like some guesswork and like experience. So you would, to help yourself, plot this out, and don't dig this out. We'll just dig it out once. This is going to have a bridge on it. Do not build... You would want this all to be left blueprinted. You wouldn't actually want to dig it out until the last possible moment because of the terrain changes I mentioned super briefly before. It's okay. You guys didn't know, and I didn't say anything. Just imagine that this is all still blueprinted, and which we can actually do if Belfast, if you don't mind stepping out.
Belfast.
It's okay, he's probably AFK or something.
Yep, okay. There we go.
So the way that you would want to do it, and this is going to be hard to explain because you can't really see like what's going on my screen. I'll just leave this here. Imagine that what I'm putting down, you are hovering so that this top rectangle section that I'm running back and forth on now is going to be like where you're mentally aiming for. You're going to want to cut it in half by like hovering your little square like in between it. So charge and happy move a sec. So like imagine that you're hovering that square over the center here. So that's like cutting it in half. That is going to be where your entrance is. And then you would let this blueprint, this trench blueprint, like fade away. You wouldn't actually dig it out. It would just basically be like in one fashion where you would put this blueprint down, then you would get out your square blueprint and have it placed here. You would wait for the original trench to go away, and then you would place down the square. And that's you'll see it in the video. I'm gonna upload it in like probably in the next 4 days or so. But you would want this all blueprinted out first. The reason is that if you were to actually dig out this trench, it's going to very slightly change the terrain around it. It's going to slightly raise the terrain or fuck with it in some way so that the game doesn't allow you to as easily build near it as it did before. If you were to build the bunker entrance like here, there is a pretty good chance that the game will just say no. It will just say that the area is obstructed, and then your only choice is like to either demo the whole thing or tiers. You would want to place a bunker entrance there before you build the bridge after that. So it's all getting this all blueprinted, and this is the order. You get them all blueprinted, and you guesstimate how like close you can get your bunker entrance, and then you dig it out afterward. You dig out your bunker section first, you place a bunker entrance, and then you put the bridge down. For your first base, you do not have to do this. What I'm explaining to you is something that you can fuck around with on your own. This is just extra security for the people that are inside. The best thing that I can recommend to you is to try to do a few things.
Chill, dude, chill.
It's to find a spot that is relatively flat in a non-critical area that is preferably under the umbrella of a town hall or relic base, and you just practice. You create a 360 ring of defenses around it, and you build an anti-satchel trench with periodic pits around it, and then you just wire that all off and tier 2 it all up. Building your own base from scratch, alone or with friends, is probably the best way that you can get like real-time experience without being yelled at. Once you do your first like solo or with friends base, and you're like, okay, I could see how many BMATs that costs. I could see in general how much time it took myself versus other people helping me out, whatever. Then you'll be in a better position for when the front is getting absolutely fucked up. The collies came in, they destroyed everything, they left shitty trenches everywhere, and you get your mammons out in a truck and you remove all the trenches, and then like there's people are understandably confused about building because nothing about it comes naturally, and so you say to yourself, I built a base before, I did it from scratch, it wasn't perfect, there's room for improvement, but something needs to be here, and it's got to be me, or else it's not going to be anyone. And then eventually, as you keep doing that, you'll build the muscle reflexes that you need in order to just do it naturally. And then you'll decide for yourself whether you want to be backline or frontline engineering. I'm psychotic, and I actually enjoy frontline engineering, even though it's incredibly painful and satisfying at the same time. There's a couple of different defense sections that you can consider for whatever base that you're trying to create. So we'll go to some untouched part of the land here, if there is one. We'll go back here north. We'll go all the way north. There's a few different meta designs. You are not obligated in any way to dig out these designs in this order. You will learn just through sheer experience what sorts of modifications that you can make to the designs while still getting coverage. The only thing that matters is going to be some mashup of alternating anti-tank and rifle garrison defenses. Machine gun garrisons are very niche in that they have very specific uses, and until you are very comfortable with covering all your bases, I would not recommend actually building them out. They're good for hyper-specific situations like covering choke points where you have 100 billion% certainty the enemy has no choice but to get through. Rifle garrisons can fire on multiple things at once and in 360. The machine gun garrison can only fire in a cone. They will kill whatever they hit ultra fast. Right, exactly. They will kill whatever they're pointed at ultra fast, but they also can't target multiple things. And until the devs fix that bug where garrisons have the unfortunate habit of shooting at the same body over and over again, no matter how dead they've been, I actually wouldn't build many machine gun garrisons at all. There's a couple of different meta designs that I'll show you here. So, and then the diamond piece. Facing inward. This design that I'm creating is called the dive bomber design, which is not an eloquent name for it, but it makes sense for what it is. The idea is that you have a AT on the side. You have a rifle garrison pointed towards wherever you believe the enemy is going to be coming from. Watch out, Az.
Hey guys, make room.
And you have a howitzer garrison in the back, oriented wherever you think they're going to be facing or coming from. Watch out, North.
Guys, back up a little
And
bit.
another AT on the side. This will have pretty high integrity and a good number of pieces to it. This is a relatively inexpensive way to get like 250 degrees of coverage from the rifle garrisons, and you know both sides are covered by AT for tanks. The weakness of this section is that infantry or tanks, if they can get a good angle, can shoot at the very tip of this rifle garrison, and possibly, you know, get around it, or like the infantry can shoot at the very corner of or the side of this AT garrison without the rifle garrison really being able to aim at them easily. No defense section is invulnerable to everything. This is a good way to cover all your bases cheaply, and then you just keep alternating them throughout. So it would be the same design here, like for example, but this you might have as like a rifle garrison.
Can you
and
go over
there's-
the locations of them one more time for
What's that?
on the pieces?
Oh yeah, if someone with a pistol could destroy that, because apparently I don't have any more ammo. So on the sides here, you would have anti-tank facing out, a rifle garrison here, and another AT on the side. The weakness of it is that you can't easily go AT rifle, AT rifle, AT rifle, which is the preferred way, in my opinion, of getting defense sections set up. There is something called a W. Hang on, if someone doesn't mind destroying this. I just need like one pistol shot. Unfortunately, that's the only easy way to remove a blueprint for right now. Anyway, there's something called a W, which is considered the most meta of meta defenses. You can't really go wrong with it. The weakness of them is that once one W goes down, infantry can just, or tanks can just go to their side and PvE them down. They can just destroy them somewhat easily from the sides. But they are also comprehensive in that you can't easily get defenses packed as close as you can with a W. So if someone is paying attention to your base, and if all the W sections stay up, then you have multiple overlapping coverage pretty much all the way down the line. It's extremely hard, especially with that anti-satchel ring that I mentioned before, for enemies to actually get around it. That's primarily why it took like West March almost like 4 days after FILMORA fell for them to actually get through it all, is because of the combination of just W's covering every angle and the satchel trench. So the W is a little bit more complex, and I would recommend taking screenshots of these, because for the longest time I could not remember how to do these. Until I took a screenshot, it was easier then. The W is rifle here, and a bunker section here, or diamond section here. And inundate, do me a favor and dig a square section here. That's where I'm standing, like right there. So that's kind of like a diamond. And Flippa, I'll have you move. And someone put a square piece there. That top square piece that he's just putting down is going to be AT. And another square here. Watch out, Belfast. Watch out, you're still blocking it somehow.
How fast do you need to move?
Belfast move. Belfast move. And the same thing down the line, so I'll let you guys put like another diamond here facing the same way as the others. These two squares back here are going to be howitzer garrisons. The way that W's are set up with howitzer garrisons is going to look a little bit weird, and the reason is coverage. So you would think that you would have the barrels of the howitzers, sticking out like there, like just sticking outwards. Paradoxically, the best way to orient them is to have their barrels cross in the center like that. That way it covers like 200 degrees like west to east on one side, and on the other side like south to north. So the only way that an enemy is going to be able to get away with artying this, or really doing anything to it, is this really, really thin, like 30 degrees sliver, like basically going like due south of like whatever the section is. So like no matter what angle they're going to be hitting this with, they're going to get hit with something. And do me a favor and remove that piece. This here is your basic W. It has a lot of health. Its integrity is going to be pretty high for the amount of parts that are attached to it. There is a smaller version of it called a Y, which is literally just this part here, if we were to and remove that part there. If we were to remove this diamond piece here, hang on. If we were to remove that middle diamond piece and put, and then a square here, that would be a Y. So it would be good for like tighter turns, basically. Alright, I know that was also a lot. Any questions about that? Those, I would say, are the three defense sections that you're going to be seeing the most often. You'll notice that at the actual bunker base, there were weird looking W's and stuff, and that was because I had to turn the coverage of the whole structure in order to keep like continuous wall going. The easiest way to defend yourself immediately without having to build like complex structures like this, or to do it like super cheaply, is the 1x3, which, as the name implies, is literally just like it's just a string of like 3 squares, and having those be AT rifle, and so on. Doesn't have any like howitzer garrison protection at all. But if you're building like a partisan base that you're not expecting to survive for any real length of time, just putting like 1x3s like all around your base will be enough to keep most stuff at bay for a good while. Important thing that I should mention is that each of these like AT places, each of these things that you want in the future to be AT, you have to reserve. You have to reserve all the square pieces that you're not going to be upgrading into rifle garrisons right away. The reason why is because people feel compelled to take BMATs and to make anything that can be a rifle garrison if they have the option of doing it. And it is with the best intentions that they do that, but it also means that if a tank, like a Kali tank group, is seeing that it's just literally all rifle garrisons on one side, they are going to fuck up that section, whether or not there's an anti-satchel trench or not. Literally nothing is going to be firing back on them. Only stuff that is hit that belongs to a section is going to fire back unless it's within a minimum range. So most of these like AT and rifle garrisons have a minimum range of like 22 plus meters. I forget what the exact value is, but it's relatively short. It's when a tank or something shoots at a bunker section that has AT built in it, that the AT turns on its real range, which is like 45 plus meters. So, you know, if a tank is going to shoot at a defense section that has AT built in it, it has to be really sure that it's either going to be able to back away far enough, which it probably won't, or it can destroy that section quickly enough. If, for example, you had these two things, the dive bomber and the Y, right next to each other, unless it's with splash, if a tank is shooting this Y and all it has are rifle garrisons, this dive bomber isn't going to give a shit unless the tank is within 22 to 25 meters. It's just not going to respond at all, and most collies understand that. So that's why you want to reserve each piece that you can't make whatever you want to make it right away. So reserve your AT spots and reserve your howitzer garrison spots. This is more of like an intermediate to advanced thing, but howitzer garrisons can also be used as ghetto AT if it really comes down to it. They do have some anti-tank quality to them, and they do have a really high tendency to track enemy tanks. So if for whatever reason you do forget to reserve both of these top spots on your Y, and both have to be rifles because someone just decided that that's how it has to be, and you did reserve this last piece here, and you put a howitzer here, if the rifles are shot with like a tank shot, the howitzer will respond. It responds to any high explosive damage at all, which means that if whatever collie has like a dream, runs up with like a mammon or something and throws it at the rifle garrison, the howitzer garrison will fucking fire on them as long as it's within like 5 meters away. Which is really weird to think about, but there's lots of different options that you have, more than you would think when you're first starting out. Questions? Okay, so there's something that you can do beyond alternating rifle garrison, AT rifle garrison, and then reserving it all to make sure that, Joe Schmo doesn't run up and put rifle garrisons everywhere. The easiest way to upgrade your base after the fact is by putting engine rooms down. Engine rooms are also very poorly explained by the game. You never, ever, 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 under 99% of circumstances, want engine rooms built into your defense sections, or even your bunker core. The one exception is attaching them to like an observation bunker section. So an observation bunker section would just be like a 1x3, like this, like 1, 2, 3, where one of these is going to be a rifle garrison, the middle one is going to be an engine room, and the one on the other side is going to be an observation bunker. Observation bunkers are always worth building, so you'll want to make sure that you have space in your base for at least one, because they're like super watchtowers. The engine rooms you're going to want in clusters by themselves of, I would say, probably like no more than 3 for integrity reasons, unless you're building like super weapons, which I'm just not going to cover here. The engine rooms, each engine room can power up to 5 different defenses, each defense taking 600, and each engine room powering up to 3,000 watts worth of stuff. Piping is 30 BMATs, so it's pretty expensive, and can be piped from the engine room to the defense to give it night vision. Its night vision is actually slightly better by like a meter than during the day, and this prevents situations where collies can walk within like 6 meters of your defense at midnight and be able to do shit to it really quickly. Like it guards against like cutlers and stuff like that ahead of time. It also helps your AT, although if the tanks are close enough to shoot at it, the AT typically will shoot back, but AT can take advantage of it too. There is a hidden limit to the amount of piping that you can get away with. So if, for example, I were to build like the engine room here, and you're trying to get the piping all the way from the engine room to this rifle garrison up here, you have up to 20 pipes that you can go before the game just decides that it's going to start sapping away power from your engine room. And it's not going to tell you why. You're going to hover over the rifle garrison in upgrade mode because you notice that the light is off, and it'll say 599 out of 600 watts. And you'll be like, why the fuck is that happening? It's because it's like the bunker section stuff that we explained before, where you have 40 connections to go. Piping has 20. So you can get as far as 21 before it just decides not to work properly. If you ever get as far as building a super weapon, which is more of an advanced thing, but you will, like, if you get really into engineering, you will find a way to build a super weapon. It's just going to happen. You're just going to feel compelled to do it. You want the super weapon to have a minimum of 12 engine rooms, and you want it to be on a closed circuit. You don't want piping to be running through literally anything else. The game has power coded bad, which is evident enough from the 20 connection limit before it starts arbitrarily, taking power away. But if you have that power running through anything that is not the super weapon, the game will just be like, nah, your super weapon is getting half power. And then and then it'll leave you to explain why. Or it'll leave you to not be able to figure out why. So we've covered it's been real crash coursey. We've covered like the basic stuff like tech order, getting the anti-satchel trench, at least one arty pit, the howitzer garrison facing, the alternating like AT, RG, AT, RG, that sort of stuff. But there is other things that you can do in order to make the people that come to your base's life as easy as possible. And you want that to happen because if a person becomes attached to your base, they're going to want to operate out of it, which means that technology speed is going to be upgrading faster. It means that people are going to, in some cases, be more likely to supply it. Logi is going to feel secure that they can reliably support your base, so they're going to reflexively think about supporting it whenever they can because they know what options they have in order to supply it, and that they can do it safely and so on and so forth. We've covered all the basics of it. There are some things that you can do to make their lives collectively easier. The first one, which is going to cause you to need to extend your kind of like defense screen out artificially, is like a tank staging area. So if you are feeling kind, you can give people a dedicated area to load up their tanks with whatever they need, to be somewhat out of the way to store their tanks, although really you should be using tanks instead of storing them long term. And that could be with like a staging area. So that could be something as simple as like a 5 by 5 meter area that you can reserve just for people to be staging tanks. You could, if we were to come over here, ignore like all these lower rocks right here. Pretend these rocks aren't here. But if you were to have some defense sections, pretend this tree doesn't exist, some defense sections facing out, and you were to put down a sign in front of this area and call it something like tank staging area, do not build here, keep sane, something like that, then people will eventually learn that this area is where they should arm stuff up. And if you are also kind, you could put a encampment right here stored with just like tank shells or whatever, so that people they're going to smooth brain it, like kind of like the defense sections, and they will just intuit, like, I hope that there's going to be 40s, I hope that there's going to be 68s in here, and they will be glad when there is, and then they could just load up from there instead of cluster fucking the front of your actual base where like you want infantry and stuff to be arming up. Now that said, people will misuse the area. They will park locked trucks in random fucking configurations in this area. It's just gonna happen, and dealing with that frustration is just part of what it means to be an engineer. That it's extremely satisfying when people just know what to do in your base just intuitively, and where to get stuff and where to go and how to defend it. It also comes with a million people just randomly treating it like a dumpster fire and just doing whatever they want wherever they want it. It comes with pros and cons.
So this is part social engineering?
Yes, exactly. That's incredibly accurate. You are basically, through your base design, you are teaching people how to use the base, or kind of like curating it in such a way that they know where to go for what. And part of that is signage. People are going to ignore signs, just like in real life. It's just gonna happen. They're gonna do stuff that the sign explicitly says not to do. Like, for example, in the last war, I had a sign at Market Road saying explicitly, "This is a squad locked truck used for base maintenance. Do not use as a taxi." Within 30 minutes, it was still gone. People just will not read signs or just blatantly ignore them. But for the 80, I would say probably the 70%, which may still be generous, of people that do read signs, it will help you more than just be ignored. And one way to easily help yourself the most is telling people what order you want your upgrades to be in for the main base. So if we head back over to the bunker base, you will want to put down your sign somewhere off to the side here. You never, ever, ever, ever want your sign to be close to the bunker entrance if there's even a remote chance that someone might access the sign instead of the bunker. Sorry, the bunker entrance.
Shit ever.
So something like really off to the side, like here, people will still see it because you can't ignore a sign, because if you're anywhere within like 8 to 10 meters of it, it's going to like scream on your screen like what the text is. You would want on the sign that is close to your bunker entrance a few different names, or a few different things. You can name your base. That does help you psychologically. It also hurts you when it's under attack. But it gives people a name to work with, that they associate with it. It's just a personal thing. You don't have to name it. I guess it's kind of, like livestock at that point, where like you never want to name it, so you don't get attached to it. It's up to personal preference. The one thing that you do want to incorporate, no matter what, into this sign that is near your base entrance is the technology order that you want people to upgrade in. So if people are rushing into the area because they know that it's under attack, and they run up to the entrance and they press E on it, and they're setting their spawn, you want something that tells them what they should select if they're going to select anything at all, as far as like what you want the upgrade to be. So like small garrison is available to click on. So you would have the sign say something like, welcome to X or Y base. Tech order is like rifle garrison, provisional AI, and you could use like abbreviations. Typically most people would be able to figure out what the abbreviations mean. Provisional AI, small garrison, or you could just call it tier 2 AI, machine gun, AT, and then concrete, or observation bunker, concrete, howitzer garrison. That order that I just gave you, which I'll repeat, is the order that I would recommend most of your bases to be at. There is some exception when you build under a relic base, but it's useful for all situations. So you get your bunker base all set up, like the absolute beginning. You get the 1200 BMS ready to go. You tier 2 the bunker base itself. You put in 4 garrison modifications, the people kind. You get rifle garrison teching first instead of provisional AI. The reason why you want rifle garrison first is because provisional AI is only going to take like 10 to 15 minutes tops anyway, and while provisional AI is being worked on, you can start building the rifle garrisons so that you can have some defenses already in place the moment that the provisional AI goes live. So it'd be rifle garrison, rifle garrison, provisional garrison, and then small garrison, machine gun garrison, AT garrison, observation bunker, concrete structure, and to howitzer garrison. And then after that, it's more advanced stuff. It depends on what the situation is. If you're building under the umbrella, and I'll explain what I mean by umbrella in a sec, of a relic base or a town hall base, then you don't really need to focus on small garrison at all. You can just go all the way down the line of rifle, machine gun, AT, observation, concrete, howitzer, because the relic or town hall is going to be supplying the AI instead. All static bases, which is like your town halls, relic bases, and safe houses, will start out fully upgraded as long as they're in friendly territory. When an enemy captures one, it starts from the very beginning, so it loses all of its benefits and has to be upgraded again. Even if a base is left alone, like say that we were to capture like a Kali base or something, and it starts off from square one, a base in and of itself does generate technology progress for itself over time. It's extremely slow, but it does do it. And so sometimes people build like what are called sleeper bases, which is literally just this part here, and then they just let it go. They build a rifle garrison technology, and then they just check on it every now and again to make sure that it has like supplies in order to maintain itself long term, like very basic supplies like the literal bunker supplies in order to sustain itself. And then when the time comes that people do need to use it, they can just graft whatever defenses they need on around it, and then it already has like large garrison and stuff like that. But that's dealing with more complex stuff. So each one of the static bases that I mentioned has a AI range, which is the maximum range that defenses will automatically defend themselves. For bunker bases, once like small garrison is technology, or once it's upgraded, it will project a 80-meter radius around the base that it will give AI to. And when you have your shovel or your hammer out and you're going to build something like a pillbox, the game will tell you that it's X meters away from the nearest base. And then once you leave that 80-meter radius, it will tell you that this thing isn't connected to a base anymore, so it won't have its AI turned on. You can still interact with it, and then if it's a rifle garrison, if you have a route under it, like with a trench connector, you can still like press Q to go into it. Or if it's a pillbox, just because it doesn't have AI, it doesn't mean that you won't be able to go into it, but its actual defensive portion won't be on. The Relic and Town Hall are special in that they have a 150-meter radius around them, which is like an infinite amount of space for you to build in while still having coverage. And the reason why I've been harping all this time about if you cannot all help it, when you build like your first real base that you feel like you're going to be there for a long time, I wouldn't recommend doing it for your first base, because then people have a chance to get mad. I would recommend building like your very first base around like a salvage field or something. But when the time comes and you see like an abandoned relic in the back lines that no one's built at for like 100 years, they start off in friendly territory with large garrison teched all the way up, which gets us to bunker supplies and garrison supplies, which is an endless conversation. And I will condense it as much as I possibly can. There are two types of supplies that you can produce at a factory: bunker supplies and garrison supplies. They both cost the same amount of basic materials, which is 75 per one crate of 150 garrison supplies, or bunker supplies, because there's two different types. Garrison supplies will keep alive everything within the coverage of the base that you're trying to build defenses under. So if you put like a crate of garrison supplies into a relic base, everything within 150 meters will stop from decaying. You have like a grace period on structures that you build before stuff starts decaying. And that grace period for tier 1 stuff is 24 hours, and then it starts taking passive damage over time until it just liquefies. It just gets destroyed spontaneously. 48 hours for tier 2 stuff, and 72 hours for concreted stuff. So you can think of it as once I upgrade all this stuff to tier 2, I have basically 2 real-life days before I have to start paying for it and maintenance with garrison supplies. So garrison supplies will keep alive literally everything within the radius. And that's like pieces of wire. So like a stretch of wire you can think of as one garrison supply worth every hour. Because the bunker base, or the bases, use supplies in terms of like per hour. Every piece of sandbag is going to be 1. Every individual bunker piece is 1. Every trench is 1. And so on and so forth. Every individual tank trap is 1. So you're keeping alive everything, but you're also paying for everything. And you might think to yourself, okay, well, that's what I want anyway. I don't want any of this shit to decay. That is a nice thought, that you would want to have like all the extra defenses around forever, but your base, in theory, if everything is going well, isn't going to be the front line forever. You don't want it to be the front line forever. So let's say that this is the front line, and there's tank traps and emplacements and gates and shit everywhere that you want to keep alive. you would use garrison supplies because that would stop all that from decaying. You would be paying a lot more because each one of those things you're paying for individually, but you want all that stuff there. And then let's say that we're doing exceptionally freaking well and we're pushed way into the next hex, like 2 or 3 bases out, then you are suddenly no longer the front line. You don't want to be paying for all that shit, and that's where bunker supplies come in. Bunker supplies keep only the trenches, things like trench connectors and actual normal trenches, and bunker pieces from decaying. They will allow that timer, that passive damage to happen to literally everything else. That includes things like your emplacements or gates, so you have to keep an eye on that. You have to periodically check and make sure those are repaired up. You can get fancy with the system and, like, while you're frontline, have it be all garrison supplies, and then when it's no longer frontline, you still want the emplacements, but you want everything else to decay. So you let the garrison supplies run out, you fill your base with bunker supplies instead. Preferably you would want bunker supplies in while the garrison supplies are still active so that there's overlap there. And then once the garrison supplies run out, then the bunker supplies take over. They allow all the extra shit to decay away because it just won't pay for those things. And then once all the extra shit is gone, then you switch back to garrison supplies to keep the gates and like emplacements and stuff alive. And I know that was a lot. So the best way that I can explain it, to think about it long term, is that is your base frontline, then use garrison supplies. Is your base backline, then use bunker supplies until all the extra shit is gone, and then switch back to garrison.
That makes sense.
So I guess that kind of segues into the importance of gates. And this is another thing that will frustrate you endlessly. People will leave gates open all the fucking time. Even if you put signs up, even if you shout at them in region or local, they will leave gates open. Gates are important to covering areas like this here for a couple of reasons. Collies are psychotic in ways that wardens typically are not. They have no self-preservation instinct at all. So they're more than happy to pile 5 of them into a truck and just bum rush your defenses and all hop out at once. A gate will stop them because enemies can't open gates. So they will just run into the gate, get completely torn apart from the defenses that are facing them, and then the issue is over. Late game, last war, it was not uncommon for tanks to try to bum rush Market Road, and the only thing that was stopping them was a gate. Like, they were trying to basically like outrun the AT garrisons tracking them, and they would have succeeded if the gate wasn't closed. But they just rammed into it, and then the AT tore them apart because they were getting hit on the sides. You can of course put up signs that say like, "Please keep gate closed," but you can't control stupid. You just can't. People get on the game, and they're like, "Hey, this is Battlefield. I'm just gonna bum rush through all these gates. People will figure it out," and then don't realize that they're creating like gaping holes in the defenses. They're like, "It's a gate. Who cares?" And then all it takes is one satchel team with a dream to run in and destroy everything that you worked so hard for. But try not to think about that. But on that note, no matter what, and I'm not dissuading you from building bases. Building bases is arguably the most important part of this game that is overlooked, and that's why I'm trying to set up stuff like this training session. You will lose your base. Absolutely. Unless you are deeply backline, you will lose your base, either because the war is going to end, or partisans are going to chip away at it, or it's going to get satchel rushed, or it's going to get, just through sheer force of like a frontal assault. You will lose it, and the most important thing that you can do for yourself is not see that as a permanent loss and just be like, fuck engineering, I'm never going to do it again. You have to see it as I'm glad they did that, because it means that I can build the defense sections better. So what I'm going to tell you is going to sound fucked up. I'm going to risk it. But there were some times where, like in past wars, where I think to myself about like all the 1x1 rifle garrisons that are and trench spam and stuff that's littered everywhere, and like Integrum, for example. And I could not help but think to myself, I hope that collies land there and completely destroy all of it so that we could replace it with better defenses. You know, I don't want them to actually succeed. I do want them to remove all the garbage that was there so we could build something back proper. So just, it's a continual learning experience. A good way to think about it is thinking of your base as one big Buddhist sand painting, where you put a lot of effort into it and you can make something intricate and then it gets wiped away. But that means that you have the experience to build it up better next time. The only other thing I could think of is location. So, along with the activity that I was talking about before, where people are doing stuff into and around your base, building your base like near like main logistics roads is a good idea, both for logistics and because it increases the activity of your base. Preferably, depending on what the map layout is and where you're thinking of building, you want your base semi-close to water, and you want to build some kind of secure area with cranes in it that Logi can use to offload supplies easily into your base in a situation where your base is going to get surrounded and normal road Logi is going to get cut off. Having cranes parked on top of like your bunker pieces, which is possible because of like glitching the game, which I'll show you now with the CV in case you're not aware. You can get into anything with tracks, anything with like that's fully tracked, and of course this is fuel because fucking animals strip the fuel out of this. Why would you take the fuel out? This is also gonna happen a lot. So this is a good example. Okay.
Stoic's third law.
It's gonna happen. If there's a vehicle, eventually someone will strip all the fuel out of it. So having a fuel tanker is good. Anything that is fully tracked, so anything that's not like a flatbed or something that's like half tracked, can get onto most bunker pieces, and that includes tanks. So if you absolutely need to, and I don't recommend having tanks to the point that you need to do this, you can park tanks on top of like bunker sections like this. So normally you will see people park like CVs and cranes and stuff on top of bunker sections to easily take off like small shipping containers and stuff like that. There's also like other amenities that you can include, like a dedicated field hospital area, but it's honestly not worth, in my opinion, at this time to have a space reserved just for field hospital, unless you're building like a partisan base that where like the only guaranteed Logi is probably going to be enemy Logi, or like if you want to, it's like enemy bodies have a 10%, or all bodies have a 10% chance to drop a clean body that's bloodless, and you would take those over to a field hospital, and they would eventually get turned into like force shirts or some shit. So it's like really fringe use. So, yeah, there's undoubtedly like way more to engineering. Like you're after, I would say probably like unless you're gonna try to put into practice what I just mentioned, like right away, you're probably not gonna remember about 50 to 60% of it, and that is okay. Like even if you get experience, which I arguably am, even if you get very experienced, you're still gonna forget shit. You're still gonna build like an amazing looking defense and a big ring with your anti-satchel, trenches all over, like in like a concise ring around it with the AT placements, and you're like, this is good shit, I like this shit. And then it's going to occur to you immediately afterward, after you put all the blueprints down and you've already dug stuff up, that you forgot to put down engine rooms. Or something is going to happen to your defenses, like if you forget to reserve a piece, there's always going to be that one guy, like I mentioned, that is going to feel compelled and sense. They're going to sense that the piece is not reserved. They're going to sense the closest beam mats, like a predator with like his heat vision, and they're going to go and either install an engine room or a ramp. They're just going to do it, and there's no undo button for shit like that. So you're going to forget sometimes to reserve pieces, and you're going to wake up the next day And all of your howitzer spots are going to be ramps for reasons, because fuck you, that's why. Yeah, any questions?
The people who don't click on one of the tech trees when they spawn or set spawn, do they not add to the how much that goes up?
Yeah, so they actually do contribute. It's just that like they're setting their spawns is like passive point generation, but instead of it devoting all of their individual points to like the thing that they selected of their choice that's green check marked, it's going to split it evenly across all the different options that are available to the bunker base.
Okay.
So if it's an encampment and there's only one option, you don't have to vote it.
Exactly, you don't have to think about it at all. And the encampment, you don't even like the game differentiates between the it hardly differentiates between the bunker base and like the encampment as far as like setting your spawn. So you can have your spawn set to an encampment or a bunker base, but not both. So the encampment is almost never worth setting your spawn to unless it's like a really fringe situation. To have any long-term defenses in an area, you're going to want a bunker base. Like if you want something protected long-term, you're not going to be able to get away with pillboxes. You're just not. That you would use encampments in a couple of situations, like the tank staging area that I mentioned, where it's just for shells and shit, or like BMATs and uniforms for tankers. Or if you are outside of your bunker base's 80-meter range, and like you accidentally built like a defense section that's like 85 meters out, then you would use an encampment in order to kind of like artificially nudge over the coverage a bit. Each base, like I mentioned, it does generate its own points passively, even if there's literally nothing like that's being put in it or taken out of it or spawn set to it or whatever. It will eventually tech through like small garrisons and stuff on its own. Anyone else? Okay. If there are any other questions, you can pretty easily find me on Warden Unity Hub or in the Regiment Discord if you are interested in joining CAF and being, and learning more about it through osmosis. You are more than welcome to join. We are happy to have you as long as you can go probably like a week without causing like an interregimental crisis, or if you can go a week without, racial or sexist slurs, you are welcome.
What about yelling at people from your tank?
You can't do that. You can do that. That's fine. But you can't cause a crisis. That's all I'm asking.
Do you have a YouTube or anything like that?
I do have a YouTube. Right now its videos are set to private because it's mostly focused on this, and because colleagues are stinky and I'm not ready to give them building information just yet. I do have a YouTube, and I'll be posting this to it, and I'll probably make it public. But I will be posting the the YouTube link to this video specifically in Warden Unity Hub and places like that, and in different regiment discords.
You know how to get to the Discord,
Could you
right?
clarify company problems?
Yeah, so basically, like, if you can, if you can go without gassing, like, if you could just be a normal person, if you are a normal functioning human being, like, you're allowed to be weird, you're allowed to be a little bit weird, but if you can be like, I'm not a racist, sexist, but, or if you can hesitate from gassing other regiments out of like their trucks because you want their truck for reasons, then you're gonna do just fine at the regiment. Basically, just be normal. Don't do anything psychotic, and you're fine.
Easy now.
Yeah, just
Well, this
be a
game's
human.
lot
This
of that
game's
comes
getting
from-
better and better the more I learn about it.